Today's webinar is entitled Keeping It Together When the Workplace is No More. And so my name is Denis Chainé. I'm one of the partners here at the CPA firm of Logan Katz. And we're going to try and have a discussion with all of you about our new realities as business owners, as business leaders, insofar as they relate to the changes that we have all undergone about affecting our human resources. So usually when we present these seminars, we do a Q&A at the end, a question and answer period at the end. But because of the unique nature of this webinar, whenever you have comments or questions, please write them into the chat box. And my colleague Stacy will interrupt me and read out your chat if it requires an immediate discussion. So we'll take a pause from the presentation, we'll address your question or your comment, and then we'll move along. And maybe at the end of the webinar, if there is something in my presentation that I haven't covered, that will be your opportunity to write something down in the chat box and let me know that you would like me to address something else or get comments from the other participants that are present in this presentation. So what is the purpose of this webinar? Well, our workplaces have changed dramatically over the past few months, and we felt compelled to see if there might be an appetite to get us together and discuss some of these elements as a group. And so I'm very grateful that you have accepted the invitation. The purpose of the webinar, I'll start by saying what is not the purpose of the seminar. This is not being delivered on the basis that as accountants, we possess the human resource expertise to start advising you on how to manage your human resources, whether or not we're in a pandemic world. This is meant to stimulate discussion by use of the chat, as I mentioned earlier. Interrupt me, and I'll try to be brief in addressing some of the chat matters just to keep pace with the presentation. It's important that we understand our common challenges. I think we're all facing the same realities, but this is an opportunity maybe to reaffirm and reconfirm that. Hopefully we can share ideas and that we can learn a little bit from each other's respective experiences. And we have to keep in mind that there are no clear solutions in any of this. The path forward is completely unclear. We are totally in uncharted waters. And let it be said that I, as the webinar host, am not here to be patronizing in any way or to start preaching or promoting any specific solutions. I'm here to share our story at Logan Katz, the stories of our clients who have shared them with us, the stories of our competitors who have shared them with us. And so we just felt that we were equipped with some information and some data maybe that might be of use for those of you who've accepted this invitation. I do not think you're going to learn anything new in this webinar, but I think it might be a good platform to put some order in our thoughts and remind ourselves that we need to be aware of the transformation of our workplaces and how they affect our most significant assets, being our human resources. So in order to see where we are now and to determine what our challenges are and how we can address them, let's take a little bit of a look back, see what's happened over the past 10 months. So before March of 2020, most of us had a central workplace. We had relationships that were defined vertically. We knew who trained who reported to who mentored who. We also had a heavy accent on the physical oversight and supervision. Everything was clear. We were all together, collaborating, working in teams, and there was so much clarity to the way we operated. We also had organic horizontal collaborations. People worked together They worked in teams. They cross-trained each other. They developed social relationships, which benefited our businesses and our workplaces. That strong sense of being and of collaboration was really beneficial to our respective successes. There was some structure that allowed for that, but a lot of it was organic and just happened on the fly. We knew how to communicate. We knew where to go when something was an issue for us. If we had a challenge, an obstacle, we knew who to go to. We did have systems and data. All of us had time and billing systems or accounting data or whatever it was in our workplaces to allow us to make decisions and oversee the performance of our staff. But we also relied heavily on the observation side of things. People came at 8 o'clock in the morning, they left at 5. Everything was predictable. We had an endless number of face-to-face relationships. We had meetings, we'd go for lunch. We had some performance appraisals where we would address people's performances. And there was a lot of body language. We could see how people were feeling all the time. We could sense it, we could gauge it. But most of it was physical. We also had a bunch of intangibles that contributed to our successes and to the uniqueness of our workplaces. The group lunches, the potlucks, the staff events, executive retreats, all kinds of functions. And we also took our staff out to galas and networking events and cocktails where they got to exchange with other people, but continued collaborating within our group. It was all fun. It all contributed to team building. But again, that was then. Till lightning struck in March, and overnight, our entire teams abandoned the ship. At Logan Cats, I remember fondly, quote unquote, all kinds of people grabbing computer equipment and screens and putting them in trunks of cars in the parking lot, and everyone left. We were faced with daily changes to our technology. What we were faced with today was new from yesterday, and it was old in comparison to tomorrow. There was an immediate, complete focus on the health and the safety of our staff. That became our priority. Some of us, our businesses were faced with survival issues. We didn't know what to expect tomorrow. So there was a large focus on, is my business going to be able to survive? And am I, as an owner manager, going to be able to continue what I've been doing for the past X number of years? And the intangibles that I mentioned earlier, those staff events and those potlucks and everything, those just overnight went down the drain. Then we had a little break in the summer. The sun came out, May to August. The dust settled. We had new ways of working, and we were sort of getting comfortable with them. Our technologies had been adapted. They were in place. They became stable. We were no longer faced with daily changes. We didn't need to adjust on the fly all the time. Our systems were now tailored and adapted to the new realities. We had some staff on vacation. The atmosphere was a little bit relaxed. And for some of us, our staff and our human resources opted to come back to our physical office. So there was a little bit of a feeling that felt and sounded like pre-March of 2020. And now where are we at today? The fall. There's a new normal. We keep waking up every morning and it's the same thing. It just doesn't feel like any of this is going away, which is why we're doing this webinar today. And we're addressing September and beyond, the new normal. Where do we go from here? Our workplaces are scattered. They're spread out all over the place. We still have the good old office. Some of us have staff working in the office. And then we have that new office that's spread out all over the place. The future, the landscape is completely undefined. It's undetermined. We're not really sure where we're going. But we have new systems that are in place. They're implemented. We're working with them. We're no longer as obsessed with safety because our protocols have been put in place. They're secured. We feel good. The staff understands them, and we're all operating with that mindset. But uncertainty remains the theme. We keep working with not knowing what lies ahead. We're getting used to it. It's starting to feel like a new normal. And we have a better understanding of the depth of our challenges. But the biggest one, I think, and I think you'll all agree that from a human resources standpoint, we're still a little bit lost as to how to deal with this, how to make it work, how to rediscover that feeling of the workplace that we used to have, given these new normals. Now, with that in mind, we thought we'd narrow down the endless list of COVID HR challenges that we all have to maybe 3 areas. What we came up with is the performance issue of our staff, that vertical angle where we're supervising and training and mentoring. How do we monitor and manage our staff performance when we don't see them? There was such a strong reliance on working with them every day, and now that's no longer there. Personally, I used to walk around the office and I'd manage on the fly. I would be able to gauge people's performances, their ability to focus, if they were going through an unproductive period, if they simply weren't feeling well. So how do we address that performance issue? Our office collaboration. So this horizontal viewpoint, how people work together, how they collaborate with each other. That's a significant challenge. We don't see that anymore. We used to see it. We used to hear people asking each other questions. We used to hear them laughing. We would see them having lunch together. We don't see that anymore. We don't know to what extent our teams continue to collaborate with each other. And those intangibles, they were our trademark. They defined our unique and dynamic workplaces. They're gone now. We can't do them anymore. So how do we preserve that fun stuff that kept us together? There's a few questions that are pretty significant in this new pandemic workplace. What is now our offering to our human resources? How is our workplace unique? How can we convince our staff that it's better than elsewhere? Has it just become a job? Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm sure you can all relate to this, but at the beginning, our staff was telling us that they felt grateful that they still had work, that they still had a job, and that they were still being paid, because what they were seeing out there was people experiencing very different circumstances. Is that still there? Are they still grateful? What is that offering that we can still demonstrate to them? How can we recruit the best talent? We used to have a story in our recruiting exercises. We used to have a pitch. We used to say, this is who we are. Who are we now when we recruit? We're trying to recruit the best people. And then similarly, how do we retain our highest achievers? What's in it for them? How do we convince them to stay? You know, in our firm, for example, we, in terms of staff moving on and the challenge to retain our staff, the natural lateral move is going to work at the federal government. And we used to be able to say, but how could you do that? Look at the workplace we have here. It's so dynamic. We always learn, we laugh, we play hard, we work hard. And that was our pitch for them to stay. And we have to ask ourselves now, how powerful is that pitch today? If they were viewing the federal government, for example, as a place where they could not have what we had to offer here, faced with the reality that we can no longer offer that, why would they stay? How can we convince them that this is still the best place for them to work? And if we recruit and try to retain people, if we look at our competitors, how can we say we're better and more unique than our competitors? And how can our competitors tell their staff that they're better and more unique than we are? Because we're all starting to feel and look the same. Now, in my exchanges with either our fellow accounting firms in the city, other accounting firms that are with our international network, with my clients and our clients here at the firm, and with my colleagues, I've found that a few myths appear to have set in about the New World Order as it applies to our workplaces. I hear, and I'm sure you do as well, I hear things like, I don't think my staff is working as hard as it used to. Is that a myth? What if they are working even harder? In my personal experience, I can only tell you that before March, if I sent an email to a colleague after 7 p.m. or after 6 p.m., I wouldn't get a response until the next day. Today, when I send an email at 9 p.m., there's a strong chance that I'm going to get a response. So you got to wonder, are they working even harder? Is that a myth? Is my staff more efficient because they're working at home? But what if they're more efficient? Is that a myth as well? They have less distractions. In a workplace, the reality is we have a lot of distractions. Most of them arguably are positive and constructive, but there's still distractions where you stop working. The driving into work, the driving home at night. Has that hour and a half been replaced by productive time on whatever work that they're doing for us? Is the staff disconnected? Have they moved away, moved on from their workplace? But what if they're more attached than they ever were before? What if that gratefulness I talked about earlier is even stronger than it's ever been? My staff is okay. It's all good. It's business as usual. But what if they're not? We don't know that as much as we used to because we don't see their red eyes coming in the morning, or physical traits or body language that informs us that things are not all that great. What if they're suffering? What if there are mental or physical issues that we're no longer aware of because they're not as clear? And have we evolved towards two categories of staff, the office and the home? And I hear some people telling me that they value more the office staff than the home staff. Is that fair? I don't know. So if we come back to the three main challenges that we've identified for the purposes of this webinar, being measuring performance and monitoring performance, and the staff collaboration, and then the intangibles. So if we start with measuring and monitoring the performance of our staff. And by the way, of course, there's something in it for the employer to monitor and measure our staff's performance. But our employees here, and I'm sure yours as well, continuously tell us they need feedback. They need to know how they're performing. So when we look at this new world as it triggers an obstacle with our abilities to measure and monitor our staff's performance, they want that as well. They're feeling the same change as well. The observation side of things is no longer possible or limited. So inevitably, we're going to have to heighten the importance of our information systems and our data to make sure that we're getting the relevant information we need to measure the performance of our staff. We might need to update our systems, we revisit them, maybe taking a step back and redefining what our key metrics are. Maybe we're not focusing on the right metrics. This is an opportunity for us maybe to tweak our systems to make sure that we're getting the right information. Making sure we have the tools to replace that observation side of the staff performance. And figuring out how to share the information at all levels. So if we have statistics and data that is important in our decision making, why not share it with everyone in our organization so that they have a better understanding of where their performance are, where their employer's performance are, where our business is standing in the big scheme of things. And with all challenges lies opportunities. So if we take a step back and spend the time we need to redefine our information systems, we may be able to enhance the definitions of our goals and objectives across our businesses. And that will set our staff up for success. Provides us with a new opportunity to automize our data. Perhaps we were relying too much on that physical observation side of things. And maybe now this is an opportunity to get more information within our systems. We can organize it. We can make sure they produce relevant information. But we also need to take the time to analyze that information to make decisions. In our case, I have to share with you that with more staff working remotely, it's also given us a heightened opportunity to identify lower performing staff. For some individuals, we felt when everyone was together in the office that they were at least average producing employees. But now that they're no longer here, we realize in hindsight, so not just as a result of working from home, but it's put into light the fact that some of them have things to work on. And it benefits our business, and it probably will benefit them as well. So if physical observations and the ability to exchange with people no longer exist, we still need to stay connected with our staff. We need to find ways of communicating with them, because that was being done before on the fly. If we don't do it, we're probably removing a significant part of our office dynamics. How do you replace running into people throughout your office and asking them on the fly, what are you working on? How's your project? Do you have any difficulties? How are you feeling? How do we remain in tune with our staff and feel the pulse of where they're at, which is all directly related to whether or not they're performing appropriately and meeting their objectives. And so we have to find ways of reaching out continuously and on an ongoing basis with our staff. We've got to find ways of making it a priority, even scheduling it. It is natural as business owners and as colleagues in general to have better connections and easier connections with some individuals. We just have more in common with them. Other people can fall sideways. We can't let that happen right now. We need to perhaps even pay more attention to the people that we don't have that natural connection with them. And we need to find ways of convincing them as well to communicate with them. That communication level needs to go both ways. And of course, this is the more people you have in your team, the bigger the challenge this is going to be. If you have a small team, you're probably already doing this. You probably adjusted quickly into the pandemic. But with bigger teams, it really is difficult to instill discipline to stay in touch with people who are working from home. My personal experience is I set myself a goal of contacting 2 of my colleagues per week. So when I come in on Monday, I can't leave on Friday if I haven't spent some time on Teams, of course, with some sort of a substantial engagement with them. That's just my view, my practice, my policy, and you probably have yours as well that are just as good. And if you have ideas, please send them in the chat line. Now the performance is, what are you working on, and do you have any obstacles, and how's your project and all that kind of stuff. But what about the simple good morning and how are you and how was your weekend? That's gone as well. When we were all in the office, the first thing we all remember doing on Monday morning was kind of like bouncing around in the office, and we would hear, how was your weekend? And we would find out how people's weekends were, and we would hear other people exchanging in various workstations about their respective weekends. We found out so many things about that. And I think it was very critical in our workplaces. We don't hear that anymore. They're at home. So unless you get on Teams and you reach out to everyone one at a time, which is probably unlikely because we don't have time, we've lost that je ne sais quoi. But as employers, we really need to continue exhibiting the care that we did on Monday mornings. And so perhaps it's important to, again, take a moment to establish clear and specific goals for all levels, involving everyone in these exchanges, these vertical exchanges. They've got to be recurring. You can't just, say I'm going to do 2 this week and then not do any for the next 3 weeks. You got to set up your pattern to make sure that everyone has a connection with their employer, with their workplaces. Involve your managers and your supervisors. It doesn't need to rest on all of your shoulders. I think our staff really appreciate the value of time spent with all their superiors and not just the business owner or the business leaders. And in doing so, the time that we will invest doing this sort of stuff really will yield significant opportunities, such as you're going to get to know your staff more. Whereas in the past, you would limit it to a good morning, you might now spend 5 to 10 minutes on Zoom every other week or every couple of weeks with them. And you may find a lot of things that you didn't realize about these people. You may also gain a better understanding of their challenges, if they're faced with obstacles, if they have technology issues at home or logistical stuff that is getting in the way of their strong performances. And you'll be better positioned to identify serious issues a bit earlier on. How do you know if your staff person has, for example, a mental issue if you don't spend a little bit of time with them? What if they're not productive? As I said earlier, we've discovered some staff are not as high achievers as we thought they were prior to this pandemic. And so it's by spending time with them and monitoring their performance that we were able to detect some productivity issues. So these three things are really related to getting in the way of, potentially getting in the way of their good performance. And once you have a handle of things and you have the good information, you can bring upon the corrective measures that might be required. There might be some people that you need to have a serious discussion with and tell them you have to come back to the office. We provide a safe workplace. We're adhering to all the public health measures. You're not performing appropriately at home. So how can we get you back in here? Or how can we fix what's going on at home? Now, the elephant in the room about our staff's performance, what about remuneration? That is potentially a completely new thing in this new world order. The first thing I think we have to ask ourselves is our business struggling during that pandemic, or has it flourished? Are we soaring? If our business is struggling, the content of this slide is probably not as relevant. But if our businesses have gone on as usual or are even soaring, our staff are aware of that. They've noticed it. They're busier. They're working harder. They're working more hours. And there's probably a need for us as business owners and leaders to spend a little bit of time to revisit their remuneration and seeing if there's anything that should be adjusted or tweaked, whether they need a raise, maybe an interim year bonus. And really, the reality is it might be in our instincts to do the opposite. Maybe it's in our instinct to say, we're in a pandemic now, they're just lucky they have a job, they should be thankful to me, and I don't even want to deal with raises or bonuses. As a business owner, I have taken all the risks in the world to continue on in business, and this is the biggest risk that I've ever faced, and so I'm not going to share the wealth. That's valid. There's nothing wrong with that. But there might be rewards to us as employers, and they may come later if we're open to sharing the wealth a little bit with our team. And there's no better reward as an employer than the one where you get to recruit the best staff available out there or retain the best staff that you already have. If in a year or so, you've got the best candidate for a certain position in your organization knocking at the door, and they ask you in the interviewing process, how did you work with your employees during the pandemic? And you're able to say, you know what, we were very fortunate that our business carried on, we were successful, and we were proud to do this and this and that for our staff. And I bet you anything that we will be able to recruit that star that is on the market and prevent our competitors from gobbling him or her up. We should probably take a look at our benefits and the perks that we offer our staff. This might be an opportunity to revisit that or adjust or tweak what we're used to providing them. Again, with a view of making sure that they continue to be motivated, that they continue to be fulfilled, and that they feel that they're part of something. The first and easiest thing that we should all do is look at our employee benefits plan. If we have one, we should meet with our plan promoter to make sure that what we're offering our employees is still relevant. And if it's not, maybe there are safe alternatives that we can replace with the traditional stuff that isn't as meaningful or valuable to our staff as it once was. They might be less tempted to use massages that are in our benefits plan, acupuncture or physiotherapy or things like that are not as natural as they once were. We should all make sure that we promote our EAP programs that usually are embedded in our employee benefits plan. Those employee assistance programs where if people struggle mentally or for whatever reason they feel they have a need to speak with someone. Our EAP programs might have never been used in the past, but they might be the most valuable thing we have to offer our employees right now. And we're all informed, we're all on social media, we're all listening to the news, and we all know that mental illness since the pandemic began has really spiked. Substance abuse as well is on the rise, and the people affected by these sad developments and trends include our employees, but we may not know that, we may not realize that. So if they're not volunteering the information and we're not noticing in these virtual and remote exchanges that we have with them, they need to make sure that they have somebody to speak to, and our EAP programs might carry more value than they ever have before. And why not involve our staff in our benefits discussion with our plan promoter? I think we need to consult them and listen to them, and they might guide us in terms of making sure that we're nailing the proper coverage for things that matter to them and will make a difference ultimately in their performance. Measuring and monitoring the performance of our staff, we have to keep an eye on how comfortable they are at home. We need to make sure they have the proper tools, the proper technological infrastructure. How can a staff person at home be putting in 100% of their efforts and performing to their full abilities if they're sitting on a stool, or they don't have the proper basic things like a good chair, comfortable chair, their backs are hurting, they've got scant lighting, it's not proper. We should be in tune as employers with our staff to make sure that they have all that stuff to make them comfortable and therefore performing well. We need to make sure that they're healthy and fit. A lot of that has disappeared in the pandemic. Yours truly might be one of them whose level of fitness has deteriorated slightly. An example here at Logan Katz is that we offer our staff an annual allowance for fitness, but in the past, you had to be a member of a hockey team or of a gym or of a dance team or whatever. You had to be subscribing to something. Well, that doesn't apply anymore. And if it does, people are less inclined to do so. So now we're reimbursing the purchase of actual fitness equipment to bring in their homes, which was specifically excluded in our old plan. So we tweaked it. There's nothing like a surprise. If there's something that you can do on the fly, that we can do on the fly to give our staff that element of surprise, I think that that's a very powerful thing. And if we're looking for changes in behaviors and enhancements to their performance at work, sending them a sporadic meal voucher out of the blue, it can be quite powerful. I have heard some clients tell me that they do that, but in doing so, they promote local businesses. So rather than sending meal vouchers from a fast food establishment, they'll send meal vouchers from a local restaurant or something like that, a small local grocery store or whatever. And you can reward as well. Use these things of element of surprises. I found you really did a good job in this situation, so here's a little reward. In our firm, if I may share with you, our staff write a lot of exams on the way to obtaining their CPA designation. So we always have someone writing an exam. And so when they get their results, if they have a positive result, we call them up, we congratulate them. We ask them what their favorite restaurant is, and we tell them that the firm is going to be buying them a meal with their significant other that evening to celebrate their accomplishment. And again, in most cases, we're also supporting a strong business like one of yours. So moving over to the office collaboration challenge that I had listed at the beginning, this is often the key of what defines our workplaces. This is about the interactions between our staff. This is about our staff being part of something. And that is so important. That is why people come into work with some levels of enthusiasm in the morning. And for the past 10 months, our workstations are no longer that bullpen, the water cooler, the lunchroom. People went home and all those things don't matter anymore. We have people in the office, but these things have limited use because of the restrictions that we all have to adhere to. And so how do we maintain that collaborative culture that we all had in our workplaces before within these new realities? Well, we should probably set a tone as business owners, as business leaders, to make sure that the office collaboration has not ended. We need to be in contact with the entire team at all times. We should probably strive to have constant email communications, reminders of various work policies that we have, maybe the implementation of an intranet where you've got a social dynamic to it and a business dynamic to it. They're very time consuming and they can be costly, but when they exist in the workplace, people tend to appreciate them a lot. We were told by our staff that they needed to hear the voices of the top. They needed to be reassured that things were going to be okay. They told us that very clearly. And the reason they told us that is that at the beginning we forgot. We were so preoccupied with survival and adjusting and tweaking that we forgot. And they told us, you're forgetting about us, and it really matters to us to hear the voices from the people at the top. So we adjusted, and we did a weekly, monthly state of the firm address, just to reassure people that things were okay, sharing personal stories, telling them about the firm. Were things good? Were things bad? We were transparent with them in a non-alarming and constructive way. You may have staff meetings. We have staff meetings. We need to redefine them. They're not the same as they used to be, because we used to get together. We're not getting together anymore. This is an opportunity to reinvigorate that moment. Maybe increase its frequency. If you had them 4 times a year, that may not be sufficient anymore. Maybe we need to make them more fun, make them more unique. They're a great opportunity to involve staff, to say, like, you and you and you and you're going to be part of the staff meeting. I'd like you to talk about this. I'd like you to talk about that. Or what would you like to talk about? So it empowers people. And again, it fosters that theme of where people are part of something. That professional collaboration between people. So if you had buddy systems or a mentoring system within your workplaces, it's got to be redefined and re-communicated to everyone. Everyone needs to know that they have a lateral sounding board, that they have someone that they can go to. And they need to know that they should be using it at all times and exploiting it. It's there for them. It is too easy for that to stop in both directions of people who used to collaborate with each other. We may have to step in to make sure that people are still communicating, contacting each other. There are groups of people in our workplaces who have similar interests. There's the sports people and the arts people and the ski people, and they all have affinities where in the past they would get together and do things that would benefit our workplaces, in the sense that they allowed them to collaborate on a little bit of a more social basis. But that social collaboration translated into a professional collaboration as well. It is not impossible that these things have stopped. We don't know. We're not aware about the little group that used to have a hockey pool or football pool. You know, the people who used to be in a book club. We don't know if they're still doing it. And so, again, as business owners, we should maybe stick our noses into it indirectly to see if they're still having fun together, if they're still collaborating. And if they're not, maybe we need to initiate something to make sure that they are. One of my clients told me that, I don't know if you have ever experienced it, but there's a euchre online game where 4 real people can play together, including a video function. I've actually done it in another setting, but this client of mine told me that this is a workplace of 40 to 50 people, and they did a euchre tournament over several months. They picked the teams randomly, and one night a week there was a euchre game that happened. They would keep the stats, and ultimately it led to a champion being crowned a few months later. And so they had this momentum. They knew that there was something that was out there that was coming the next week to make sure that people were sticking together. It's no longer of second nature. And so we may have to step in and make sure that it's still happening. For those of you who have people working in the physical office, maybe we need to re-look at our layout to see if it can foster some safe collaborations, because in our case, as I'm sure is the case for you, we can't eat together anymore. We're limited to 3 in the same room because of the size of the room. So what we've done is we took our meeting rooms and we've converted them into lunchrooms as well. So we've got little groups of 3 people eating together at lunchtime, but in different rooms. We have the luxury at our firm to have an amazing landlord, a very generous landlord, and he has worked very closely with us to redesign the exterior part of our office, the parking lot and the green spaces. We have picnic tables, we have Muskoka chairs that allow for distance sitting, and throughout the summer, great moments were spent outside with people who were still able to be together, and but they were still safe. The way they were designed, we still have connections with high fives. So some people every once in a while would go out there with their computers and do a little bit of work. If the exterior of your workplaces allow for that, keep it in mind, consider it. In terms of professional collaboration, one of the very powerful initiatives is community involvement. We always did that, and the New World Order doesn't preclude us from continuing to do that. Whenever we do that, our business itself will be rewarded, right? Because it's promotion. We can use social media to make sure that everyone knows how generous we are and how our culture is such that we want to be generous with our community. We can continue doing some staff fundraising initiatives. These things tend to bring our people together. It tends to foster that collaboration between our employees. You can create little internal competitions by having different groups participate in the fundraising. I'm sure that this applies to us as much as it applies to you, but our staff clearly tell us that they are proud when we as their employer are active in our community. And so that appetite remains, and it may even be stronger now because we've got so many vulnerable groups in our community, and we're aware of who they are and we can make a difference. And of course, it promotes our business. And probably one of the most important things that we can initiate or reinitiate or renew is our internal professional development, that learning aspect of our workplaces that we may have taken a break from in the last 10 months. This is probably the best time to bring them back. The lunch and learn, people can volunteer to host a lunch and learn and provide training in a specific area that they're strong with. It empowers them, and everyone benefits from the sharing of best practices and the sharing of good information. And they're really easy to do virtually. In fact, you needed to buy lunch in the past. You don't need to buy lunch anymore. It's just learn. The lunch has disappeared. So why not consider these things and make them part of your formal itinerary? You can hire consultants, bring in people from the outside, whether they're technical in nature or soft skills, communications, marketing, leadership. Our staff will all appreciate their employers providing them with an opportunity to learn new skills and better themselves. It's important to them. Maybe participate in some of our industry's specific seminars. Again, we used to do these things. We'd have to travel maybe to attend these things. The virtual world allows us to do these things at a lower cost, potentially. One of the things we always say in our office, we always remind each other, is we need to seize the moment. We all have to stop fighting the reality. It is here. It is the way it is. And we need to seize that moment and make sure that we're in tune with what it means and that we go with it. We go with the times, acknowledging our realities and just accepting the way things are, and creating a platform internally to make sure that we can speak to each other and be transparent to each other. You know, we've had some staff who gave seminars, lunch and learns on mental health issues, and it seems to have been well accepted by their peers. You can set up internal committees. You may already have them, but they may have gone dormant. I can tell you ours did for several months, but we have recently brought them back to life. From the marketing committee, the IT committee, the social committee. Again, it empowers everyone, and suddenly, despite the distances, they can be part of something again. Finally, the intangibles. How do we keep that stickiness factor? Can we still continue to have fun in this new world? And it's complicated because we have to social distance. And our staff isn't really all that interested because they're worried themselves. It's hard because we have to think about new things. I think we're all starting to be zoomed out. Thank you for being here. We're on Zoom right now, but we're all starting to wonder about, can I keep doing this for much longer? But we probably have to. It's probably in our collective best interests as owners and leaders to keep trying, to keep coming up with whatever is new, whatever we've heard somebody else do, give it a shot, because if we stop doing this, we're probably going to, in the midterm, we're probably going to start seeing our staff tune out and maybe moving on. We get the sense that there are job opportunities again. People are starting to leave certain workplaces to go and work elsewhere. So if we want to retain our good people during these trying times, this is not the time to give up. So the virtual events, that's all we got. There's nothing else. So we got to continue doing it, figuring out practical ways of bringing people together and finding ways of laughing together. One of my clients shared with me that they have a monthly amateur night on Zoom. And this particular client told me that they are in complete shock with what they have discovered in terms of their team's talents, their ability to sing and write, recite poetry, and name it. Every month, they discover new things from this unique initiative. They wouldn't have done that in the past. This was an opportunity now to do it, and it's been amazing. Physical events. I mean, this is probably a very odd thing to bring about, but are there still things that we can do, in particular outside, that are safe, where our staff get to see each other's faces, albeit wearing a mask? I can share with you that we actually did a get-together October 1 and October 2, and the reason I say 2 dates is because we're too many people, so we broke it into 2 days. We had half the staff come in on day 1, half the staff come in on day 2. It was outside. We brought in a food truck, and it was very, very well received, much more than we would ever had imagined. One of the firms I spoke with in the US, they are organizing, they've booked actually a Christmas tree nursery, and they are inviting their staff to come in on a certain Saturday between 1 and 4, and the employer is paying for a Christmas tree and a Christmas wreath for their staff, and they will have hot chocolate and coffee served, and so it'll be a great venue for their staff to see each other, allow for very safe social distancing, and for people to spend some time outside. And I thought that was a neat little concept. And with those intangibles and the importance of continuing to have fun together, we've got the big events, you know, our holiday party. What do we do this year? It's less than a month away in terms of the old holiday party that we used to have. It's probably not the right year to skip it in its entirety. And so we're going to have to start planning early, maybe have some surprises in store for our staff. And I don't say this lightly, exhibit generosity. Like, this is not the time to cut corners and cut costs in terms of what we're going to offer our staff this year with those big events. This is probably a nice opportunity to go a little further. And I can tell you that even if you think big and throw in some extra things, it'll be less costly than your past events. You're not going to be paying for Ubers and cabs, and you're not going to be paying for rounds of shots and all that kind of stuff. It's still, despite your appetite to be more generous, it will still cost us less as owner managers than it did in the past. Somebody shared with me in my clients that they're not doing their holiday party this year, but they calculated the budget of past year's holiday parties and brought it down to the cost per person times 2 with their spouse. And they are giving their staff a choice of gift certificates for that value, again, with local businesses, their clients, where they're promoting their clients, and the staff, without having a holiday party, will get a nice, generous gift from their employer. I thought that was an interesting idea. So with that being said, that concludes my overview of what I felt are 3 significant challenges in our workplaces in the current world. What do we do today? Where do we go from here today? I think we all have to accept that this is not going away. This is not fading away anytime soon, even if we've been hearing promising news of vaccines and some exits from this terrible state that we're in. But the reality is it's not going to happen tomorrow. We're going to have to continue juggling with our staff our needs to make them produce, be productive, perform well. We still want to retain them. We need to care for them. We need to keep them safe. Some of these elements are contradicting in nature, which is why it's a juggling act. But that's what we're faced with today. We're going to have to find solutions to that. In the midst of that, we're constantly faced with a threatening economic environment. We don't know what lies ahead. It's, businesses, as you know, are resilient. You are resilient as business owners. And it's been quite fascinating to see how the world economic order has not fully collapsed, but it's not easy, and there's still a threatening aspect to it. We're not quite sure what lies ahead. But I think we all agree that we need to embrace changes. They've been imposed upon us, so we can't fight them. We need to embrace them. We need to learn, and we need to be open more than we ever had before. I encourage us to speak to our peers, our fellow business owners who we know, even our competitors. We have a monthly get-together with other small accounting firms in Ottawa, and you would be shocked to find out the depth of information sharing that happens during those get-togethers. It's beautiful, actually, that competitors can get together and help each other out that way, and perhaps your industries can provide that as well. And so in the future, what will our workplaces look like? Will it go back to January 2020? Is this ever going to come back again? Did Shopify make the right decision? Are we all going to imitate Shopify, terminate our leases, and send everyone home? We'll see. Will the workplace become a revolving turntable where everyone works everywhere? We don't really know where they're working. My nephew works for KPMG in New York City, and I thought it was really amusing when KPMG asked them, could you at least stay in the United States? We don't mind where you're working, but we would prefer if you were in the country. I thought that was interesting. Are we faced with a generation gap? Is this something that is sort of coming out in the light with this new realities? Millennials are here to stay. We tend to be skeptical. Well, I would imagine half the people in the audience right now are millennials, but millennials are here, and people my age, I think, have to stop being skeptical. We need to understand that they're making statements, and we need to accept them. Millennials are accessing leadership roles, and even Generation Z, who are now in their late 20s, early 30s. They will not change. They are who they are. My generation raised them that way, and I think we need to accept them and hear their messages. I'll share with you a Logan Katz example. In our firm, we have half our staff working from home, half our staff working at the physical office, all on an optional basis. They get to choose where they want to work. Well, of the people working at home, 86% are younger than 30 years old. And of the people working at the office, 57% are older than 40 years old. If that isn't a demonstration of a generation gap, I don't know what is. There's something there. We will figure it out as time goes by, but we probably will have to accept some of these facts. We need to continue listening, learning, and adjusting, and replace our skepticism with embracing reality. So in the post-pandemic world, what will probably become the question is, can everyone continue to be part of something in their workplace, given these new realities? So it is 11:59. How is that for a 1-hour presentation? I never really thought that it was going to land that way, but I don't know if there's anything in the chat box, Stacy, but you're all welcome to send in something quickly. If you do have questions, I'd be more than happy to engage in a discussion with anyone who has questions or comments, or share some of their stories about what's gone well or not well.
So far, there haven't been any comments, but I'll just leave the floor open.
So if everyone on the call doesn't have any comments, if you can maybe sign off and say, no comments, all is good, so that we can move on with the rest of the programs in our day and go and team our staffs, one of our colleagues, to see how they're doing. All right, so thank you everyone for attending, for taking the time. As I said earlier, I don't think I told you anything that you didn't know before, but I still hope that you had some appreciation for what we put together, and always let us know if there's anything that we can do in these webinars to make them more relevant, more useful for you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.